Unit 3 Diverse Logic of Theory Building. Contents 3.1 Introduction, 3.2 Concerns with Theory in Sociology, 3.3 Concepts Basic Elements of Theories, 3.4 Why do we need theory, 3.5 Hypothesis, Description and Experimentation, 3.6 Controlled Experiment, 3.7 Designing an Experiment, 3.8 How to test a hypothesis, 3.9 Common methods of testing a hypothesis, 3.10 Sensitivity to alternative explanations, 3.11 Rival hypothesis construction, 3.12 The use and scope of social science theory, 3.13 Theory building and researchers' values, 3.14 Conclusion. Learning objectives. It is expected that after reading Unit 3, you will be able to answer the following questions. What do we mean by theory? What are the constituents of theory? Why do we need theory? How do we build theory? What is the use and scope of social theory? How do values held by researchers affect theory building? 3.1 Introduction. After discussing in Unit 2 the basic logic and understanding social reality around us in terms of empirical investigation, we will discuss in Unit 3 why and how sociologists arrange in fairly compact theories their propositions about the social world. Before reading Unit 3, it would be well to appreciate that emphasis on theoretical formulations and methodological rigor in empirical research go hand in hand and do not in any way pose any problem of ascendance of one over the other. Your logic of theory building is your asset to carry out a useful empirical investigations and vice versa. A methodologically sound social research leads to growth of verifiable and valid outcomes in terms of their theoretical significance. In the light of the above clarification, it makes more sense to read Unit 3, which elaborates the process of building theory building. This deals with hypothesis, description and experimentations. In addition, it would discuss the use and scope of social theory and the issues of social scientist values affecting theory building. As in Unit 1 and 2, discussions in Unit 3 also follow the pattern of informal and narrative style with examples from sociological writings. 2. Concern with theory in sociology. Theory refers to knowledge arranged so that the facts are subsumed under general principles. The difference between the commonsensical knowledge and scientific knowledge is that the latter is systematized and classified, but only classification does not make any knowledge scientific. What really makes it scientific is that while commonsensical knowledge is satisfied most often with the desired effects, science looks into the causes of a phenomenon. It is the task of the theory to organize such causal relationship into observable, repetitive or classifiable regularities so that one can make general observations that encompass diverse but related phenomena and explain them by not individual and specific relationships only, but by a higher and abstracted general relationships. To look for causes underlying any observable phenomena is the first task of science, for otherwise, as often happens with respect to common sense, people expect or demand contradictory goals without realizing that they are doing so. Establishing the correct causal relationship between facts is followed by bringing together diverse facts within a single framework of causality. The process by which this is done is called theory building, for the resulting relationship is often called a theory. In other words, you can say that there are three constituents or properties of theory, namely explanations, prediction, verifications. The systematically interrelated sociological propositions which hold in different contexts comprises theories. You can put to test each of this proposition as to how well it conforms to data and how well in relation to each other the propositions account for the outcomes in a given setting. If such a prediction is possible, you can say that the result has been explained in terms of non-propositions. While verifying the sociological propositions, one needs to look for a logical relationship as well as empirical relationships. As you can make out, explanations, predictability, and verification in sociological theory building are closely interrelated elements. We shall now discuss them in detail. Before we go on to the discussion, it may be a good idea to carry out one reflections and action exercise right in the beginning of the unit in order to fully appreciate what is meant when we suggest that to look for causes underlying any observable phenomenon is the first task of a social scientist. Reflections and action 3.1. We have given below an example of underlying causal cause of overcrowding in cities in relation to a commonly held perception of city dwellers. You need to write a separate sheet of paper another similar example based on your own experience. One example is that of city dwellers living in cities and often complaining of overflowing slums containing migrants from rural areas. They also complain of inadequate electricity but do not realize that it is largely to fulfill the exuberant requirements of power of big cities that mega hydroelectric projects are built, and these projects often displace large volumes of populations that have no recourse but to throng the slum in the cities, thereby increasing the burden further on the resources of the cities. As said earlier, we look at the theory as an account of the world which goes beyond what we can see and measure. It embraces a set of interrelated definitions and relationships that organizes our concepts of an underlying of the empirical world in a systematic way. In this sense, we can agree with Waters, who says that social theory needs to be abstract and separable from the social practices that the theory has addressed. Such a theory needs to also focus on specific thematic arguments that runs through the set of propositions, providing them coherence and force. Next, the theory has to be logically consistent and explanatory. That is, it needs to have a thesis about social phenomena to account for their form of existence. Further, the theory is too general enough to account for all instances of phenomena it proposes to explain. Also, the theory cannot be reduced to the explanations informants or participants themselves provide to explain their behavior. Finally, the theory needs to be substantially valid, that is, it is to be consistent with what is already known about the social world by its participant and by the social scientist, including other sociologists. This means that it should be possible to link the theory to other bodies of knowledge. The best way to validate or truth of a theory is to test its predictability. For example, Thorstein Veblen had collected together some properties of the elite in the society designated by him as the theory of the leisure class. The validity of this theory lies in how often and how predictability with the persons belonging to the elite class exhibit the properties so designed. The sciences by definition need to be predictive on the basis of their theories. In the natural or so-called pure sciences, there is a set limit on probable range of failures of predictability of a theory before it is rejected. In the social sciences, theories rarely have the capacity for predictability, yet some degree of ascertaining the truth of a situation has to be assigned to any statement for it to take on the mantle of a theory. It is now time to complete reflections and action 3.2 for looking into the predictability capacity of theories in sociology. Reflections and actions 3.2. We are giving below an example of theory that owing to other variables has limited capacity for predictability. Identify similar examples for the theories you have learned in MSO 001. Compare your examples with those of other students of MA Sociology at your study center and select 5 best examples of such theories and discuss them in terms of their capacity for predictability and presence of other variables that inhibit large scale prediction. Select a panel of 4 to 5 learners to present and discuss their examples to how to show the difference between commonly held views and scientifically analyzed reasons behind a phenomenon. One example is the exchange theory, which states that the principle of exchange or equivalence of transactions of give and take underlines such a human behavior include marriage and nature of children. However, other variables such as power and altruism intervene to explain situations that recurrently digress from the principle of equivalence. Moreover, it is also recognized that human relationships operate on the basis of non-material considerations such as prestige and honor in determining dimensions of exchange, like the flow of goods from person of low to high status. In the social sciences, we find that because of the complexity of human life and behavior, the situations of predictability are intervened by a large number of factors. A one-to-one causality is rare in the social sciences, though it is possible in mathematical sciences and natural sciences. The academic counselor of MS Sociology program is requested to organize a recording of the panel discussions among the learners in collaboration with the IGNOU Regional Center in your region. After completing the section of concern of theory in sociology, let us look at building blocks or basic elements of theories. 3.3 Concepts, basic element of theories. Whenever we are talking in terms of theory, there is a necessity to use kind of vocabulary that is often specific to a particular discipline and contains terms that we call concept. These concepts are nothing but the shorthand versions of a large range of phenomena that may be brought under one heading to describe something. Concepts are basic elements of theories and we develop them through a process of definition. Theories basically connect concepts to one another in a logical manner. Let us take for example the concept of culture. When a social scientist uses the term culture in any written or oral discourse, the meaning of the term is roughly comprehensible to another who has knowledge of the discipline. Each concept is usually accompanied by a standardized description called its definition. In the nature sciences, such definitions are very precise, but in the social sciences, they may not be so. Anyone who has struggled with the definition of culture in the first year of joining sociology will know how difficult it is to find a one-line definition of culture. Even today, most persons may not agree on any definition whatsoever. Yes, yet most social scientists would have a fairly good idea of what is meant when the term culture is used. Thus, all scientific disciplines have their own terminology of concepts, popularly known as scientific jargon. The concepts are abstractions that are not made randomly but by a recording of structural properties rigorously selected from the visible traits exhibited by the phenomena under the study. Although such selection can be made on the basis of statistics, the ultimate construct is made intuitively or deductively. As far as possible, it is assured that the properties selected are of universal occurrence. Let us once again take the example of concept of culture. It is universally recognized that although the capacity for culture building may be a genetic mechanism, culture by itself is learned behavior as proven by the examples of children who have been deprived of being nurtured by human adults. This learned behavior is transmitted over generations but is also capable of being transferred to other groups and transformed over a period of time. The traits which often go into the definition of the concept of culture have been abstracted from actual observations and recordings of human groups and their behavior. Also, it is quite likely that certain properties considered to be true at one point of time may be given up or modified when fresh evidences comes up. For example, the propositions that only humans are capable of culture is being modified by fresh researches on non-human species. Prepositions in all sciences are always open to the scrutiny, and continued research in a scientific manner means that we keep testing earlier statements of their validity. This is why science is recognized as a never-ending process, and that is why in social sciences few concepts achieve the status of universal and timeless truths as in mathematics. Statement of absolute validity like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 is rarely possible in social sciences. There is always recognized a difference between theories based on constructs and experimental laws based on fact. In this sense, the social sciences are by and large theoretical and non-experimental. All the same, we build theories in social sciences. The question arises, why do we need theories? Let us try to answer the question. 3.4. Why do we need theory? The need for theory lies first of all in that theories help us to put order in the bewildering range of phenomena that might seem unrelated, but with the help of theory we may summarize in terms of a few principles that nurture the relationship between them. The more abstract a theory, meaning the more generalized a theory, the wider is its applications, but further away it is from actual situations. You may say there are two types of theory, namely formal and substantive. Formal theory is most inclusive and basic in the sense that it is aims to isolate a single set of principles which are the foundation for social life. Though these principles you can explain every social phenomena, it is a paradigm give birth to grand theories. Evolution theory is an example of a grand theory which makes some broad generalization regarding the nature of society and the nature of transformation that one expects to see, but it would not be very predictive when applied to everyday realities of life expect in very broad sense. The last significant attempt to write grand theory was made by Sorokin. His theory of social and cultural change attempts to establish two basic like generalizations. For details of Sorokin's grand theory, see Zetterberg 1965 and 15. As a reaction to writing grand theory, Petrim Sorokin's student Robert K. Merton formulated theories of middle range. You can say that these are miniature theories or partial theories. Such theories endeavor to explain specific but general branching out events or specified type of social process. When we designate a theory partial or middle range of miniature, we mean that this theory does not contradict other accepted theories. Examples of such middle range theories are Pareto's theory of elites, Murdoch's theory of kinship structures, Hammond's theory of elementary social behavior. But whether grand or middle range, a theory is a necessity for it simplifies the take of dealing with reality. A theory providing meanings for dealing with the reality in terms of providing neat and compact explanation that we can be set into a non-explanatory framework. In this context, you may like to quote Simmel, who said that we shall discover the laws of social forms only by collecting such societary phenomena of the most diverse contents, and by ascertaining what is common to them is in spite of their diversity. Simmel's assumption is that the sociology can discover a small number of prepositions which could be verifiable in diverse contexts. In this sense, you may say that the task of the sociological theorist is to discover general propositions. Such an effort generates systematically integrated propositions. Only after generating such propositions can we test a theory. To test a theory, we need to check how well each proposition of theory conforms to data. See below the discussion of hypothesis, description and experimentations. Interestingly, often the situation is the other way around, and most of those engaged in social research collect data and look for theories to make sense of their data. In fact, the task of collecting empirical data often culminates in the scholar typing to make sense of the data in terms of available theories. If such a task is successfully accomplished, then the data stand explained. However, if the data refute or contradict the theory, then they provide a basics for reformulation of the existing theory of a new theory altogether. For example, neo-evolutionary theories such as that of Leslie White were modifications on the evolutionary theory. The replacement of the evolutionary theory by the functional theory was a refutation of the earlier theory and its replacement by another. The second task of theory, apart from the first one of explaining reality, is to generate a hypothesis that can be tested. We shall now discuss this process in detail, as this helps all young researchers to initiate their research project. 3.5 Hypothesis, Description and Experimentation. A theory by itself is an abstract proposition that cannot be tested. It is also true that a process of deduction can only be construct a theory. Even when it is based on inductive empirical data, what a theory does is to generate a hypothesis that can be tested. The reliability of a theory lies in the testability of its hypothesis. Skepticism regarding the evolutionary theory began when it has realized that the hypothesis generated by it is such as, for example, whether or not patriarchy precedes matriarchy, who could not be provided empirically. Moreover, the methodology used for providing this hypothesis were suspect. The closer the hypothesis generated by a theory comes to the reality, the better is the theory. Not all research is directed towards hypothesis testing. As in the social sciences in particular, there can be a descriptive research that seeks to explore hitherto unknown theories. A hypothesis only posits a logical relationship between phenomena to be understood and is in itself not a description of reality and may not correspond to every actual case on hand. For example, the hypothesis that urbanization leads to disintegration of the joint family is only a logical relationship between a particular form of family and urbanization that seeks to state that whether the urbanization stand for in terms of its very definition in antithetical to what the joint family stands for. So it is logical to presume that with the greater urbanizations, the joint families are likely to be break up. But this is not a deterministic statement about all joint families actually breaking up. It merely wishes to state the reality that whatever values or states of mind that urbanization fosters, like individualism and competitiveness, are a variance of the sentiments that bind families together. The hypothesis is in this sense a deductive statement that need to be proved inductively. The various ways in which theories can be constructed depend upon the types of questions asked and the basic assumptions or premises that are accepted as given truths in a situation. There are also no fixed rules or methods by which one enter into a scientific investigation, and often methods have to be devised according to one's requirement. For example, the scholars who developed the culture and personality approach had to develop their own techniques such as collection of children's drawing, recording of dreams, administration of Rorschach ink blot test, and also on methods that had not before been used in any sociological or anthropological fieldwork. The two broad divisions of logic of theory building in the social sciences is between those who consider the natural science as a model for building theory in the social sciences as well, that is to look for universal law and invariant truth regarding society and human behavior. The other point of view denies the possibility of ever establishing such truth because of the creative and diverse nature of human beings. The later point of view supports the idea that all observation regarding society and human behavior are contextualized in historically situated human groups and can never be universalized. However, a modification of the first point of view is that the social sciences are as precise or non-precise as a natural science, because even the propositions made by later often have limited application and are subjected to modification for time to time. In other words, there is an attempt to review the definition of social science itself. A number of problems may be listed to provide an answer as to why the social sciences are not capable of furnishing universal laws of the experimental type. One of them is the difficulty faced by sociologists in carrying out a controlled experiment. Let us discuss this problem. 3.6 Controlled experiment. The first of this is the lack of the possibility of setting up of controlled experiments to test a hypothesis. A real control situation is one which the scholar can manipulate the variable at will. For the social scientists, ethical and moral constraints put a restriction on such manipulations, but sometimes as an attempt has been made to take ready-made situations that exhibit properties of controlled comparisons. See Reflections and Actions 3.3. Reflections and Action 3.3. An example of a control comparison is the study of Epstein of two villages in South India. The following paragraph describes how Epstein used the methodology of comparing identical situations in every aspect except for one variable. Describing of controlled comparison. The two villages, Vangala and Dalena, were identical in terms of culture, social norms, and structure of social relationships. Epstein's hypothesis was based upon the then popular structural functional model that assumed the interdependence between the various parts of the social structure. It was a hypothesis that the introduction of outside technology would affect the economic dimensions and thus upset the earlier harmonic interdependence between the various parts of the society. The two villages selected had different technological biases, one as a dry village depending solely upon rainfall for irrigation, and the other had permanent resources of water from tanks and wells. With the introduction of water from the Krishnsagar Dam built in 1931, both villages underwent changes. The wet village Vangala strengthened its earlier forms of social structure by the increased cash input from the better irrigation facilities and the switch over to cash croppings. The increased economic input led to a continuation of earlier structural elements like caste, performance of elaborate rituals, and reinforcing of the role of caste and village panchayat. But nothing new, not even electricity, was introduced into the village. The dry village, Dalena, underwent more radical transformation in its economic roles and relationships. While it could not switch to cash cropping, people underwent transformations to non-agricultural activities. People started going to the nearby town for jobs and education, and the village became structurally different from what it was before. What Epstein is able to show in her research is that the same economic change, namely irrigation from a dam, can bring about drastically different results in two villages otherwise identical but having different resource bases. The two villages are comparable because they belong to the same region, same culture, and had the same type of social structures to begin with. The outside source of the change is also identical. The only variable that differed was technology. What are you expected to do? Read the example carefully and identify one more such controlled comparison in social sciences. Write on a separate sheet of paper its description similar to the above example in order to highlight the hypothesis and the theoretical context exploited to provide explanation of the social phenomena under study. Try to look for possible examples from the articles in the special issues of Economic and Political Weekly and the Eastern Anthropologist. This kind of methodology with ready-made situations of comparability where two field situations could be identified that are identical in every aspect except one variable was popular for a while. They followed what a John Stuart Mill had called the method of agreement or the method of differences, in which two situations were either unlike in all aspects except one, or were all alike in all respects except one. According to Mill, 1930, such situations could never occur naturally or under unmonitored conditions, and since they are a necessary conditions for a stipulation of general laws, the social science could never aspire to do so. The criticism of Mill is that even under the most stringent experimental conditions, such as ideal conditions may not be achieved or cannot be achieved, as some variables may be related in such a manner that one will automatically change if the other is varied.